Hello and welcome back to my sewing room. Today I'm doing another pattern review, and this pattern is going to be the Simplicity 3677, and I'm making the kind of white blouse sort of thing that she's wearing under the corset top. I'm going to be going through the pattern step by step, kind of showing you the process of how to make it and kind of really just kind of talking you through my process is what I'm doing. And then I will be giving it a review at the end based on 4 categories. The first category is ease of use, and this is how easy it is to use the pattern. Does it have clear directions? Does it have like pretty decent graphics and images in there that explain what you need to do? Category number 2 is garment construction, and this is basically, it's all kind of like subjective, but basically it's how I feel the garment is made. Is it made well? Are there things that could be improved to make it a little bit longer wearing or longer lasting? And then category number 3 is accessibility. Who is going to be able to procure the supplies needed to make the garment? Is it expensive? Does it require hard to find items? Things like that. I will give it a rating between beginner and advanced. Basically how skilled at sewing you need to be in order to make this item or to, have a go at the pattern. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so before we get really into it, I wanted to show you how I kind of decide what size to use for a certain pattern, and that kind of determines how I'm going to go about working with said pattern. All right, so I have the front and the back here. Hopefully you can see it okay. But basically what I do is I take my measurement for usually the widest part of my body, depending on what piece of clothing I'm doing. So in this case it's going to be my chest measurement, which is 39.25. So basically I'm just going to divide it by 4. My chest measurement is 39.25, and then I'm going to divide that by 2 in between the front and the back pieces. So that'll give me how much space I need on one piece. We don't have any seam allowance in the center because we're going to be putting that on a fold, so we don't have to worry about that. But there is a 5/8 inch seam allowance on the sides. And because we have 2 sides, we're going to have to double that. So 5/8 plus 5/8 is 1.25. So I'm going to add that to my measurement. And I have 20.875. We can see the bust measurements here. The waistline is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my measuring tape. Well, first I need to divide this measurement by 2 because this is on a fold. So I'm just going to divide that by 2. So basically this piece needs to be at least, I'm going to round up to 10.5 inches wide in order for it to fit me around my chest snugly. But a size 14, it gives me 14.5 inches just on one piece. But say I did a size 14, bust line is here. There's 14.5 inches as well. Okay, I'm gonna do a size 14. So based on that, I'm going to choose to do a size 14, which I'm gonna write down so I can remember for my review later. Size 14. Yeah, hopefully that works out okay in the end. I'm sure it will. I didn't think about how big this was going to end up being until I was cutting the pieces out because there were 4 paper sheets. that had all the pattern pieces on it, and the sleeve is huge. Like I probably can't even fit it all on camera, but this is the sleeve and it is humongous. So I'm going to take a minute and cut out my size 14 pieces, and then I will be back. I'm also going to choose my fabric as well. I decided that I'm gonna make the corset out of this blue chiffon, I guess we could call it. It's an old curtain. It's actually a set of curtains that I got at like a thrift store. But yeah, I thought, you know, a nice flowy sheer top would be kind of cool, and then I can just wear something underneath and then this over top, and I think it'll work out, hopefully. I'm just going to quickly unpick this hem with my seam ripper so that I have a little bit more to work with, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out my fabric off camera, and I will come back. Step number 1 for blouse B is to stitch the front to back at the side seams. So step 2 is to narrow hem the lower edge of sleeve, and then we are adding the bias tape to make the casing for the elastic. So I'm going to set the main part aside and take out the sleeve. There we go. All right. So I'm laying this out so that I can see the casing line here, because what I'm gonna do right away is pin the casing to the sleeve, and I can still see the casing clearly through the fabric, which is great. So that's both the sleeves ready to go. I'm going to do steps 1 through 3. So I'm going to sew the side seams on the main pieces together. I'm going to do a narrow hem on both of the sleeves, and I'm also going to sew on this elastic casing right away. And then I will check in and we'll read through step 4 together and see what needs to be done. So I've got the sleeve hemmed, and I sewed the channeling in there for the elastic later. And then I also sewed the side seams and I finished them with my serger. All right, and that is as far as we've gotten. Cut a piece of elastic for each sleeve to fit wrist plus 1 inch. Insert elastic through casing, adjust to fit, stitch across ends of casing, catching in elastic. Okay, so let me grab my elastic. All right, so to fit wrist, plus 1 inch, eh? Should I be using my tape measure? No, it'll be fine. So this is fit wrist, plus about another inch. So we need that times 2. Okay, bye. Now I'm gonna put my safety pin through my elastic and insert it here. And then we're just gonna go, go, go. And then before my elastic gets too far in there, I'm gonna pin it That way, you know, if it doesn't get lost inside the sleeve, then I have to like start over. And then once I get that done on both sides, or on both sleeves, then it's time to sew the underarm. Oh, there we go. Now it's starting to look like a sleeve. Woohoo! So then I'm gonna tack the elastic down in place just with a back and forth, you know, overlapping stitch. Once that's done on all 4 little bits, then I'm gonna put the underarm seam together like this and sew straight across, and then I'm also going to finish them on my serger. And then it says to stitch under seam allowance diagonally at lower edge of sleeve, and it's got this little thing where basically it wants us to like go like this but on the inside. So I guess I'll do that when I come back so you can kind of see what that means. All right, the sun is down, the sleeves are done. Okay, now I promised I was gonna show you what it means when it says stitch under seam allowance diagonally at lower edge of sleeve. But basically it just wants you to tuck this little corner piece like under and then sew it down so that it stays out of the way. Okay, so I'm gonna tack these down. Whee, so cute. Oh, okay, be right back again. So we're gonna go back to 12 with right sides together, pin sleeve, pin sleeve to armhole. Now I got 1 notch here, 2 notches here, so I need to find the sleeve. And apparently I grabbed the right one. 1 notch, 1 notch, 2 notch, 2 notch. So we're gonna put those right sides together. Okay, so I made the executive decision to not trim away the excess seam allowance in between the two notches, because I read through the directions a little bit more and it doesn't really say anything else about that particular spot. So yeah, I just skipped it because it seemed kind of unnecessary. And then starting in the back of the garment, which is a bit more difficult to tell what's the back and what's the front. And we also want this facing right sides out. This looks huge, right? I almost forgot, you gotta kind of fold this down a little too so that the raw edges aren't sticking out. All right, let's do it. Now basically I'm gonna do the same thing as I did with the sleeves. So I'm gonna put my safety pin through my elastic on one end, and then I'm going to go in through the back. I folded the ends in so that there was still like a little opening back here. So I'm just gonna stick the safety pin in there. And we're gonna thread. All right, there we go. So now I'm just gonna unpin this, and I'm gonna go to my sewing machine and sew these two parts together. Then I'm just gonna wiggle around the neckline a little bit, try to adjust the elastic so that it all is evenly gathered. And then I will see you shortly for the reveal.
so good.
Here it is. What do you think? I love the sleeves and I like the neckline. If I were to do this project again, I would probably put a tie on the top part because I think I want to be able to either have it like kind of all the way up on the shoulders or even have the option of kind of squishing it down, but because the elastic is there, it just kind of springs back up. So I think next time I would put a tie, like a front tie there, and I think that would look cute. And then I also, I think I would put the elastic all the way at the hem rather than kind of in the middle here. Sometimes I feel like I look a little bit like a clown. And then of course I would also make it out of like a linen or something, or even a cotton would work. But I think this is really pretty. It's an old curtain and it just lays really nice and it's like light and airy. And I think it looks really nice with the corset I made. If you watched my last video, you know that I wanted to make this top specifically to match the corset that I made. And now I am one step closer to looking, honestly, I kind of look like a witch, but I'm not mad about it. I can use this if I want to be a pirate too, I suppose, or like a poet, you know, just put on some like leggings. But I really like the way it turned out, and I am most likely going to be making a couple more of these. I want to make like a white linen one for the Ren Fair this year, and I might make one in kind of like a neutral color, not white, but maybe like off-white or something. But and I really like the way that the sleeves turned out. I love how poofy they are, so I might kind of hack this pattern and use the sleeves on something else. But yes, this is the way it turned out. Okay. Now that all of that is done, let's jump into what I think of this pattern. Simplicity. Simplicity. You done me good today. The last review that I did of Simplicity was not as exciting. But anyway, let's just jump right into it. Category number 1 is ease of use. For that, I gave it a 10 out of 10. The pattern pieces and the instructions were very clear, and there were fewer pieces to keep track of, so it was really easy to use and figure out, and also to put together. The garment construction, I would give it a 9 out of 10. My only criticism is that the elastic at the neckline is not very comfortable, so I would probably replace it with a tie next time. You know, like ribbon, or just making like a small tie out of the same fabric. That would be fine. Then it makes it more adjustable, and if I want it to be more off the shoulder, I can make it that way. If I want it to stay on my shoulder, I can always tighten the tie. All right, next is accessibility. For accessibility, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Let's see, bias tape, fabric, and elastic. Those are pretty much the only things I needed for the pattern itself. All of these things can be extremely affordable, and they're easy to find in most places. The only downside to this pattern was that because it's got kind of a puffy sleeve and a gathered neckline, you do need like a pretty decent amount of fabric, probably at least a couple of yards. But the other nice thing about this pattern is that, like, for example, I made my top out of a recycled curtain, and I got that at like the thrift store for like a couple bucks. It came with 2 of those like blue sheer curtains, and yeah, I still have a curtain left, so I could make a whole nother top if I wanted to. Yeah, it's just really great to start with because you have a couple of pieces and you're learning a couple new techniques. And not only that, but this pattern, you can do a lot with it. If you want to change it up or switch it up, you can. You know, if you're a beginner sewer but you're kind of looking to experiment with shapes and form and adding different visual elements to something, then this would be a really great pattern for you. And also, it makes you look like a pretty dang good pirate. To round everything up, ease of use got a 10 out of 10, I liked it. Garment construction got a 9 out of 10. It was simple, but it's a pretty solid piece of work. Accessibility is an 8 out of 10, and the skill level is beginner. So overall, this pattern seems like a really great fit for pretty much anybody. All right, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Comment down below if you've made this pattern before. I'd love to hear what your experience was. Please give my video a thumbs up. Lastly, feel free to follow me on social media for more frequent updates on the kind of projects that I'm working on currently. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!